Notice, like if you open your eyes and you notice, half the group is doing this, that's important information, for what you might say, or that you see somebody is tight, etc. Yeah. So it's not one or the other, and that sense of being both here, in here, and all here, that'll develop as well as we go on.
Other questions, observations? What was it like to begin guiding?
My remark is more about communication and the word we are using to guide. I was more in invitation to explore and with more question, and some of the group were more about you do this, you do that. So just something I noticed. I'm not sure there is a good way or bad way, different approaches.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I'll talk a little about that in a minute, but there are many styles. Right? One, as you say, is more invitational, to invite people to be curious, to explore, to feel, to notice. Another style is more directive. Do this, notice that, focus on this, shift that, change that. More directive. And many other styles, and I'll say a few more later. And as you say, each one has its own gift or positive quality, and usually we have a little combination of both. But I think the more important point as a teacher in training is to begin to learn, what is my style? Am I very directive, but maybe not so including the receptivity? Or am I very focused on receptivity and more passive, and not necessarily, and not including perhaps useful directive instruction? And you will all have your style and your voice, and then to know when to complement it. And at times different things are needed for different practices, different groups, different times of day. So, if you're introducing a loving kindness practice, it might be more heartful, soft, fluid. And with breath, for example, with beginners, maybe very directive, very specific, very focused, very clear. It varies. But good to know one style and then to learn or see from other styles and see the pros and cons.
So we'll move on now, but I just have a question before we move on, because I didn't set it up when I asked you to do the inquiry, but I wondered if you managed to easily find people to do it in the language that suited you, right? Because there's a additional complexity doing it in two languages, that some of you need to or want to do it in French, some need to do it in English, and some of you are equally able to do it in one or the other. So did that work out? Okay, great. Let's hope it continues like that. All right. And just the reason I ask is, if you, for example, if you're French speaking, and you might be able to speak in English, etc. But if you know that you're going to be teaching in French and that you want to do, it's more helpful for you to do the exercises in French, then I want you to be able to do that. So we'll see how we go with the forming of groups, and seeing whether we need to try and make a system for French speakers or English speakers to find each other. etc. And I'm not sure if there are any other languages that there might be enough German speakers. Yeah.
So we had a group of German.
Oh, you did. And you did it in German.
We found each other accidentally.
Ah, terrific. You're how many?
People.
You're 3. Okay, and then there will be Tom, who will usually be here at the next module as well, who's from Berlin, who's also.
And Spanish? What about Spanish? Anybody wanting to teach in Spanish? And so when you're organizing, because we'll do many exercises. So when we say, okay, now find a group of 2 or 3 or 4, you can always just raise your hand saying, I would like to be in a English-speaking group or French-speaking group, and then so people can self-select. So it's fine to announce, looking for an English group, looking for a French group.
And I wonder if we might even do it for ease in terms of 2 sides of the room. So if you want to find French-speaking people, go this side of the room. And if you want to find English-speaking people, go this side of the room. That'll be just general, right? For the whole of the next year. Les Français par là, and the rest.
And in the middle, you don't care. Either way. You have a non-binary middle. Okay. Can we switch? They're good. Okay, so I'd like to speak a little more about guiding a specific practice, guiding mindfulness of breath, which we were doing a little this morning. But I want to say some principles about guiding meditation. And just like anything, particularly I think for meditation guidance, it's both an art and it's also a practice. And through your journey of learning, it will be a dance between learning the specificity, but also the way to be fluid and responsive. And just like you may have saw in that last practice, there are many ways, many styles. So for example, first and foremost, we're always teaching from our own experience, from our own understanding, not from books, not from memory, but from our immediate experience. And sometimes the teaching will feel very transmissive. You are, say, with a loving kindness practice, you are embodying the quality of love as you're guiding. And so people will feel the quality as you're guiding, for example. Other times your instruction, like for mindful breathing, the first meditation, you might guide. Very detailed, very descriptive, very directive in a certain way. Sometimes your style might be very embodied, very sensory, or more poetic. You've probably heard many styles of meditation. Some teachers will say a lot before the meditation, and then very little during the meditation. Most in the insight tradition, I would say, give instructions for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then mostly the rest of the meditation is more quiet. Maybe a little instruction here or there. Some might be guided all the way through, like a body scan, where you're guiding people very, very systematically. So different ways to teach, different styles. A key principle with any instruction with mindfulness is you're pointing people to direct immediate experience. To direct immediate experience. So when I listen to teachers teaching, often I'll hear them give an instruction that points people to think about their experience. So what is the breath like right now? Is a question that can get people thinking, but versus attuning to the quality of breath in this moment. Sensing the breath in this moment. Noticing its characteristic. Feeling its quality. So particularly with the first foundation, breath, body, we want to use language that is pointing people to that direct experience. Embodied, feeling the breath, sensing the breath, receiving the breath, attuning to breath, that has a quality of receptivity, allowing, receiving, open. Rather than often you might hear an instruction of watch the breath, notice the breath, observe the breath, which often has a feeling of like, I am separate from my breath. This is feeling, inhabiting your body, inhabiting the breath. So mindfulness of breath is perhaps the most common, most universal, most accessible practice that many of your students, even in an introductory class, may have already experienced in the yoga class or in many places. And so it's, as in the four foundations of mindfulness, it's the most foundational practice. Most simple, most accessible, but also very profound. We can be cultivating this practice. I've been exploring mindfulness of breath for 40 years. It still has depth and richness and freshness. And the Buddha on the night of his awakening, what was he doing? Mindfulness of breath. Simple awareness. I used to teach a lot with Sharon Salzberg. She's studied in many traditions, and at that time meditating for 50 years, I think. I said, what do you do now after all those years? Oh, mindful breathing. Mindful breathing. So it's simple, but also profound. And one of there's many qualities or gifts that focusing on the breath, having breath as an object is useful. One is, it emphasizes the quality of mindfulness of a non-interfering attention. So often in our life we're controlling, changing, manipulating, improving experience, trying to. And the principle of breathing is, the breath is breathing itself, happening by itself. We don't need to do anything except relax and receive. Don't need to control, don't need to change, don't need to do a yogic breath, pranayama breath, all the other kinds of breathwork breaths you can do now. Just breathe. And so it invites a quality of non-doing, of receiving. And in that very simple way, it's also profound, because it's pointing to the selfless nature of experience. Bodily life, not self. Breathing itself, happening by itself. So as I mentioned earlier, mindful breathing comes under the sort of broad category of concentration, samadhi practice. And so to think about what's the value of focusing the mind. Often people think mindfulness or meditation is about focus. It's one part of meditation, but it's only one part of the practice. But think for yourself, what have you gained from cultivating that focused attention? Our mind, so there's a phrase, we live in constant partial attention. Constant partial attention. Our attention is divided. We're walking and listening to a podcast. We're talking and checking a message. We're driving and we're listening to the radio. Eating and so, and with our devices, very scattered attention. There was a study that reported our attention span went down 50% from 2000 to 2017. The average. It's a big drop. You might have noticed your own concentration dropping with these things. So cultivating that calm abiding samadhi allows the attention to focus, to settle, to steady, to gather, to learn how to work with distraction, learn how to keep returning to steady, to stabilize. Very calming to the nervous system. When we're deeply absorbed into breath, for example, it's deeply calming to the body, soothing. Vagus nerve settles. And that collected mind, gathered mind, supports a depth of awareness. In the tradition, concentration, gathered attention, is a support for insight. If our mind is all busy and blah, 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 we're not going to see very deeply. So it's a way to train the attention, moment to moment attention. And then we use breath. Why do we use breath? We could use many other things. We could focus on our ears, we could focus on our knees, we could focus on sounds. But the breath is always here, always available, always changing, happening by itself. So it's a useful reference point for knowing whether we're here, or either feeling our breath, or we're gone. Sensing the breath, or we're distracted. It supports that quality of beginner's mind. How many breaths have you felt? Thousands, millions, tens of millions. Same old breath, boring old breath. Except this breath. I've never felt this breath. I've never felt this exhale and this inhale. It's always fresh, always different, always unique. That's the invitation. Can I be with this inhale? Not yesterday's inhale, this breath. And also to know that, at least on retreats, for about 10% of people, the breath is not a great focus point. Because of colds, breathing problems, asthma, trauma around breath, control issues. So there's a small percentage where breath is not the most helpful. And so you also want to include alternatives. It's mostly probably mindfulness of body, mindfulness of sensation, or sound if it's loud, So I want to share some key points in guiding a practice. And I'm going to say quite a lot of things. And then we're going to have you guide a mindfulness of breathing meditation. But I in no way expect you to include all of these things I'm going to say, including all the things I've just said. You're going to guide a practice from your own experience. But I want to just also frame the practice and the key elements in any, if not most, meditations. So for example, every practice has an arc. The introduction, beginning, the middle, the end, the post-meditation instruction. There's a flow. Whether it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, right? There's a flow in the practice. And there's also a flow in your experience. The arriving, the settling, the deepening, and the coming out. So I'm going to go through about 10 different areas. First is posture. We've already looked at posture. So in any meditation, first invite people to bring awareness to their posture. Grounded, upright, relaxed, open. However you point people to establishing mindfulness of body. To invite people into stillness, settling. And then you'll speak to the eyes, either closing the eyes. And always, I don't usually say always, but always, with eyes, you give the option to have the eyes open, resting downwards. Because for some people, eyes closed doesn't feel safe. So always an option to open the eyes. If you're tired, just have the gaze lowered. Soft gaze. Or as I say, when you close the eyes, turn the gaze of attention inwards. Because our eyes, when our eyes close, a whole interior landscape of experience becomes more present. Let's do it right now. Close your eyes. Immediately feel more internal awareness, particularly of body. And as I did in the meditation earlier, so with posture, eyes, and then just become aware of the body, the sensations in the body. So a little attunement to just the awareness of physical sensations of body. In all the ways they may feel that. And the reason I do that is because I like to have people gently orient to breath. Gently begin feeling, receiving, sensing the breath. Rather than, okay, breath, okay. Because if you say, now we're going to focus on breath, there's a tendency to grab the breath. Rather than just sense the body, relax, or invite relaxation. And then noticing how the body's breathing itself. The breath is happening naturally. And so our work is to attend to feel, to receive the breath. And in the beginning I might invite people to just feel the whole breath, the whole cycle of breath. So feel the air as it enters the nostrils, as it expands the chest, as it inflates the belly. And as the exhale, the release of breath, the falling of the chest, the air exiting the nose. And then after some breaths, there's many different ways to do this. There's not one way I do this, but after feeling the breath in a general way, I'll say, okay, notice now where you feel the breath most clearly. The nose, the tip of the nose, the chest, or the belly. And let the attention settle into that place. And so you begin to, in a gentle way, refine or deepen that attention to the fine sensations. Noticing the different quality of the inhale, the exhale. Aware of the pause, the stillness between breaths. And then that's enough, really, for people to do the most of the practice. So you give some instructions for people to sense the breath, to settle. And then you give people a few minutes just to experience that. And then at some point there are many other things you can do. One is you can help refine the attention. For example, you may notice the very beginning of the inhale, the very end of the exhale, the beginning of the exhale. You notice the beginning, middle, and end of each inhale, exhale. Noticing the different quality of the inhale and the exhale. You give that a minute or two for people to, they can refine their attention. Not with any will, but just with the curiosity. And because this focused style of attention, it's an excluding quality of attention, as in we're focusing on breath and not including other things. But other things will come in. Sounds, sensations, feelings, emotions, thoughts. So I'll say something about acknowledging other experience when it happens. So you may notice sounds, you may notice other sensations. Feelings and thoughts will come and go. Acknowledge them because they're here, but then reorient the attention, redirect the attention over and over and over to the breath. So you don't make the other things like the sound of traffic, someone coughing, you don't make that a problem. It's just mindfulness noticing things. But we're preferencing the breath rather than other experience. You might give that a minute. Always nice to have pauses between instructions. The most common phenomena that people will be noticing other than breath is what? Thoughts, right? So, of course, you will say something about thoughts. So you may say something like, You may notice the attention is drawn or pulled or lost in thought. Or, as I say, each time you notice the attention is absorbed in thought, that noticing is a moment of mindfulness. The fact that you're noticing your thinking means mindfulness is present. And therefore, without judgment, you then either let go of the thought or you just shift your attention to resuming mindfulness of breathing. You may choose, particularly if you're teaching a new students, to add an instruction about supports, like I did in the meditation. Supports would be something like labeling the breath or counting. How many people use labels or counting in the mindfulness of breathing practice? Just raise your hand. Okay, maybe half of you, maybe. So very helpful for some people. In on the inhale, out on the exhale. Or inhale as I'm inhaling, exhaling, saying exhaling as I'm exhaling, silently. Just takes up a little mental energy that would otherwise be thinking. In, out, pause, in, out. Helpful for some, not helpful for others. Or counting. 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, up to 10. If you space out, start again at 1. You might never get to 5. If you're really mindful, you probably won't get to 5, because you see how quickly the mind just... That's okay. Start again. Start again. This moment, this breath. But have that noting, counting be very background, very quiet. And the attention on the physicality. Sometimes when people say, I can't feel the breath, it's too quiet, too subtle, too difficult, I say, put your hand on your belly. You know, like, have a blanket or something, or tie a sweater, and then rest your hand, you can't see. Rest your hand on your belly. And you'll feel the diaphragm. You'll feel the belly move, or the chest. Increases the sensation. So, tuck your hands into your belt, your trousers. And just increase a little more sensory awareness. So if it's a longer meditation, I mean, I've already given you a lot to say, and you're only going to have 10 minutes. So you'll only say a few of these things. But in a longer meditation, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe after minute 15 or 20, you could just add a little instruction. Oh, where is the attention now? What are you aware of in this moment? Where is your attention if not here? Are you tuning more to the inhale or the exhale? And you'll find with most of your instructions, especially for newer students, it doesn't matter what you say. You saying anything wakes them up from a trance of daydreaming and thoughts and spacing out and go, okay, right, breath. Okay. What's he saying? Oh, follow the inhale. Okay. I mean, you know this, right? When we give instructions, you know, you're spacing out, you're thinking about lunch. And, oh yeah, okay, breathing. So adding these little things like, you know, or saying something like, inviting relaxation in the body, alertness with the attention. They're just reminders And some people will ignore them, and that's fine. Some people will listen. Some people just wakes them up. But, and this, because you have a shorter period of time to teach, and will often give you a lot of instructions or guidance about the meditation, you might find yourself wanting to say a lot. So it's really important, as you know, with any meditation, to also have space, lots of pauses. As we gather our attention, just bring awareness to your body. Give people some moments to feel that instruction. And notice where you first feel the breath coming into the nose. Let them feel that for a few breaths. Some instructions require many minutes to feel into. So beware of the pausing, the spacing between breaths. That's why I said you'll give a few instructions for the first few minutes. Posture, eyes, sensing the breath. And then, set them up so they have enough instruction, and then give them some minutes. And then notice when the mind is distracted. You could use counting. So this pausing, spacing. And then the end of the practice, you want to bring people out slowly. You may say, oh, we have 1 more minute left of the meditation. You don't have to, but you could. Or you could say, now we're going to bring the meditation to a close. You may notice how you feel at the end of the meditation, noticing the influence of the practice. And then in your own time, slowly opening your eyes, moving your body, and be aware that you can continue to be mindful as you move, as you look around, as you stretch. So this idea of continuing that quality of attention post-meditation. And then in a class, not today, but in a class I might say something like, like I did earlier, this practice is very simple, not easy. It's important to remember that so much of the practice is beginning again, is returning, is coming back and back and back from the mind wandering. And so to encourage a spirit of patience, lightness, and reminding people there's a reason why it's called practice, because it takes practice, a lot of practice. Okay, so now the moment you've all been waiting for, you get to do a little practice guiding meditation. So again, we'll do this in groups of 3. And you'll be guiding a meditation for 10 minutes. So make sure you have some kind of clock or watch or timer. It's actually much easier if you have some kind of phone and you use a stopwatch. Because if you start at 11:58 and you're deep in the meditation, you won't remember when you started. Was it 58? Was it 48? Was it 50? Just put a stopwatch, if you have one on your phone. So 10 minutes meditation. And then second person 10 minutes, third person 10 minutes. And then 10 minutes discussion. Just talking about what was it like to lead, what was it like to listen, what did you learn, what was challenging, and then we'll come back for a discussion. Notice what you're feeling right now as you think about leading a meditation. If this is new for you, there might be a little like, ooh, or excitement, or fear, or I don't know what I'm doing. You all know how to breathe. You all know about mindfulness of breath. Teach from your experience. And even if you say a little, that's enough. Because all you have to say is, sit down, feel your breath, carry on. That's enough. And everything else is extra. Everything else is refinement, really. Because people don't need that much instruction about how to breathe. But, you know, there's ways to do it skillfully and refined. Blah, blah, blah. But make sure there's enough space, pausing. And make sure when you first start teaching, take a moment for yourself. Okay, I need to settle myself for a moment. So let's just take a moment to just settle and ground, because I need it. You don't say that. You just so just take your time. Take 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Let's just settle and feel our breath sitting on the ground. So and then you drop into your own practice, your own sense of body, breath, sensing your breath. And so you're partly guiding from your practice. As you feel the inhale and the exhale, you're speaking about that as you teach. And so the interesting thing about meditation instruction is you're both in your own practice and guiding people about the practice. So it's a kind of it going in and out. And every time I give instruction, I open my eyes, I talk about sensing the body, and I come back to sensing my body. And now attuning to the inhale, and now I'll tune to my inhale. So it's a little like that. It's a little kind of gentle movement in and out. Okay, have fun. So we'll see you at 12.